Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Council. I am Luke Anthony Walsh, and joining me is the Kamala Harris to my Joe Biden, Mr. Michael Brown. Michael, how are we?
Excuse me, Luke. I'm speaking. I'm speaking. No, good to see you, Luke. Oh, you're silhouetted again.
Well, who cares?
It's your favorite. That's what you're gonna. To be fair, you know how you get some like weirdos on YouTube who will like obscure their faces in some way. I guess sort of like the whole anonymous thing. You could do that, but instead of like a mask or something, it's just that you're silhouetted beyond recognition.
What I need to do is like record it like 2 a.m. with my lamp on, and then just have that aurora just come through and scare the living daylights out of people. That's what we need on a council.
Yeah,
Before
we've never really cared about lighting. To be real.
Not really. Before we begin, by the time this is broadcasted, we will have a new president of the United States. Joe Biden has been sworn in today, along with Kamala Harris, as we've been saying just before we click record. Joe Biden will be the second Catholic president of the United States. Jennifer Lopez will be performing. Lady Gaga will perform the national anthem. I mean, I do love how they're sworn in. I love the pomp and circumstances of it all, because whenever there's a new prime minister in the UK, they're very much sworn in.
Boring. Yeah, I don't like our new prime minister. I mean, that's the thing. Like with us, I guess the one great thing of us is that we elect a new prime minister, and then they become the new prime minister relatively quickly. They don't have to wait like it's basically 3 months or two and two-third months. So yeah, it's ridiculous. And I'm kind of glad in a way that for us it's a bit more just, oh, you're elected, get in there now.
Get started.
Yes.
It's the British way, don't you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of the time we just get a new prime minister because, I mean, the recent way we've been getting new prime ministers is just the party electing whoever, and then later on there'll be an election and they get, then it gets confirmed. So it's even more boring. Like basically in America, they get the prime minister 2 months after the election. We get our prime ministers 2 months before the election.
Aha! That is Great Britain's for you.
Painfully true.
It's painfully true. As always, we will be cancelling your issues and going through this week's headlines. So without further ado, I'm going to go first this week. I'm going to start with Signal, the alternative to WhatsApp. We discussed this last week about alternatives to social media. But I've been pushed over the edge this week because a lot of people are saying, "Oh, it protects my data. It's going to protect my message. WhatsApp is going to, give all my secrets out." To which I counter and say,
"Stop sexting on WhatsApp."
Does anyone need to know your shopping list?
I know, yeah. I do think that, like, my attitude towards the whole big data thing is that I'm kind of for it. Like, I mean, I'm not, or at least I'm not afraid of it. I do think, for example, that a lot of the big data stuff, if anything, it just makes things more convenient. And the whole, like, people, I've never really got the thing about people being scared of advertisers having their information, because the way I look at it, at the end of the day, unless you are profoundly weak-willed, it's not as if like the advertisers are going to be able to brainwash you or something. And to be honest, like I don't think the advertisers are very good, because I still get like adverts for like women's hair care products. I guess maybe, I don't know, maybe the camera just sees I've got long hair, but I get like kind of herbal essences, flowery berries, and I'm like, what part of my browsing habits made them think that I was into this? So yeah, I do think I'm not particularly scared of the whole like, oh, they're going to sell your data. And I'm not fully on board with the whole nothing to hide, nothing to fear thing, but I'm kind of like, it's a bit like get over yourself. So yeah, I pretty much agree with you.
Like, the thing is that there's enough people like you and me, both here in the United States, that if they do look at our data, I don't know what they'll find interesting.
Yeah, I really like. See, we mention him a lot of the time. Tom Scott. He made a good point about VPNs, which is that if the government wanted to catch people doing shady stuff, the best thing they could do is set up a VPN, because that way, because obviously the VPNs store all of your information, so they just go, yep, we got all the dodgy things people are doing that they feel like they need a VPN in order to do. So we'll just like there's loads of, because that's the thing, like with it's kind of illogical, because ultimately somebody's going to have your data, and because the data is there, the data can't exist unless somebody has it. And therefore, it's either going to be some big corporation or some small corporation. I feel like at least with the big corporations, there's more accountability. Like ultimately, people talk about Facebook being shit because of, I don't know, something to do with security or something. But at least people can talk about that. Whereas if you're on what's it called? The new, I've already forgotten what it was called.
Signal. Of
Signal,
course,
yeah.
it was recommended by Elon Musk, and then of course.
Oh yeah, sorry, yes, on Twitter.
Edward Snowden backed it up and said, for anyone who doesn't speak Elon Musk, it's an alternative to WhatsApp.
Yes, exactly, yeah. So ultimately, you know, I'm more likely to trust WhatsApp than I am to trust Signal, because Signal is a smaller company, which means like there's just less accountability there. You know, so that's kind of the weird thing. I mean, ultimately, people can worry about this kind of stuff if they like. People can put the post-it notes over their webcam so the government isn't watching. But you just think, unless you're like best friends with a Saudi billionaire, you probably don't have to worry about any kind of connections with the government watching you.
Could you imagine? My friend Sheikh Al Bahim the third. What do you want to know about him? He's just my friend.
Yeah,
we
I only
together.
talk to him on Signal. Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, the other thing I don't like about it is people like me. I personally don't have that much like internal storage on my phone, and therefore I don't really like having to download multiple apps. Like you know, obviously you need Facebook Messenger, you need Skype, you need WhatsApp to keep in contact with all these people. And now it's going to be like, oh, if everyone starts using Signal, there's another thing too. So I kind of just don't like how just to chat to people you need like 5 different apps because people have all these different things. So yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to cancel Signal. Screw them. But do you know what I'm going to cancel, Luke? I wasn't sure what to cancel first, but I think I'm going to cancel the Curb Your meme, or obviously the Curb Your Enthusiasm meme, but the specific thing being curb changes. And this
is that the one that ends with bum bum bum?
It's kind of like that music always sounds like Looney Tunes burlesque. That's what I think about when I hear like no, no, yeah, okay. This is
Looney Tunes burlesque. No, isn't that an image?
Yeah, maybe it's just because I watched Space Jam recently, so I'm thinking about Lola Bunny, the sexy bunny, or Jessica Rabbit too. But yeah, basically, obviously, the reason why I want to cancel. So the context of it is basically it's supposed to be, I guess, showing an example of irony. So somebody says something is going to happen, and then it shows that exact thing happening, or somebody says like that they'd be really against this thing happening, and then it shows them doing that thing. And I'm okay with that, but what it's also evolved into, and I know that like this meme's been around for ages, but you see it all the time. Like I don't know, I get like just random curb your blah blah things just in the recommended. So maybe this is another example of how big data is failing, because if big data thinks I care about that kind of crap, they're wrong. Even though I do click on them, hence why I'm canceling them. I clicked on them because I hate them. Maybe that's what big data has worked out about me, that I love to hate things. No, basically they've now transitioned it to it will be like somebody makes an argument and then somebody else offers a counter to that argument, and then the Curb Your Enthusiasm music plays. But it will be like, the issue I have with it is it's basically it exists in like a thing I see all the time, which is you'll see like a YouTube video of somebody making an argument. Doesn't matter what the argument's about. Obviously, it has to be kind of a meaningful argument. And then someone will reply below, blah 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 refuted you in this video. And then you watch the video and it's just like the other person making some contrary assertions. So they'll just like say the opposite thing. And it's like, it's not refuting them. They're not like making some fantastic argument against them. They're just saying like, and to be honest, I would say, you know, I have done response videos on my main channel. I would hesitate to say that I've ever refuted somebody on my main channel. I'd say I've responded to that person on my main channel, but if I've refuted them, that's kind of a much. I think there would have to be more of a back and forth, and they'd have to have a chance to defend themselves. And the problem is, Curb Your Enthusiasm, the meme, completely does away with that, because it's just like one person says something, someone else offers a reasonable response, and then it just starts playing the music, so to be like, haha, showed that person. And it's just like, I think it's very bad for intellectual honesty and healthy debate. See, at this point now, you just have to offer any kind of counter, and then the Curb Your Enthusiasm music can play. It's like, oh no.
No.
Dun, da, da, da. No, yeah, and that's the yeah.
It was a good effort, but no. I mean, like there's nothing better in society than to see. Like, we've seen this with President Donald J. Trump, who will be no longer the 44th president of the United States.
Well, he'll always be the 44th.
I
Wait,
know.
isn't he the 45th?
We've had this discussion, Michael, haven't we?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, you love pointing this out
Because Grover Cleveland
as
was
the
president
president
twice,
twice.
with a gap in between. I put that clip of QI up on social media today, just to eliminate any argument. Let's be honest, it's one digit. Let's just call a point and say just change history books to one digit less. That's all we need to do.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. But then the problem is, like, then it's like it's counting weird because then you'd be counting the presidents and you have to go like, I don't know which one he was. Was he like probably in the 20s somewhere?
He was Grover Cleveland was the 22nd and the 24th.
Yeah, so you got to go like 22nd, 23rd, 22nd, 24th. I don't know. Either way, it's a bit messy.
Anyway, back to what we were discussing. Yeah, with Donald Trump, there's been plenty of occasions where, like even in 2016 when he won, when everyone thought Hillary was going to win, and then the clip of Donald Trump running away with it is very much the curb meme.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing funnier than seeing Karens, people on rallies just get absolutely served by the curb your meme for their views and their opinions. And there's no greater meme. I mean, I was binge watching Curb Your Enthusiasm during the first lockdown because it's one of the greatest US sitcoms ever made. Because Larry David is
It's a Jew.
He's the funniest Jew alive.
Don't let Seinfeld hear you say that.
Seinfeld is a bit much to get into, whereas Curb Your Enthusiasm is like him and
Yeah.
the big guy.
Well, Curb Your Enthusiasm is more of a pure comedy. Oh, I know who you're thinking of, but I can't
Jeff
think
Garlin. Jeff
of
Garlin.
Yeah, good.
Like those two are just exceptional.
No, yeah, I mean, I guess, see, yeah, my issue with it is always that I guess it's a case of the problem is that I think there's I like to think I have the ability as a neutral observer from on high to tell when people have been objectively refuted. But I think a lot of people just use the Curb Your Enthusiasm meme to be like, I disagree with this person. And that's what I don't like. But I understand that you like the meme for what it does. But it's just like sometimes I think like I watch it, I'm like, I wouldn't say that person was like I wouldn't say it was a curb your, whatever
But
moment.
it's funny.
I don't know, Luke. I mean, do you know what I think's funny? Having a fun, proper debate where both sides are respected and allowed to express their opinion without being interrupted by meme music.
Yeah, it ain't getting cancelled.
Well, let's talk about some comments.
Yes, let's jump straight into our comments. Now, of course, you put a clip of us talking about Senor Trump on your main channel, which got a bit of traction. The first one I want to jump into, Fiona Catherine says concise and good points. Yes, I do think we do that. Ellie Androphobia was saying about tech shouldn't have the power to ban anybody. Also, irony linking to the Twitter policy status, to which a debate sort of raged was about comments being hidden and talking about the hateful right. Ilan Sleaze-Bagano says capitalist governments are so cucked at this point, private companies can now just censor their own government. VTeam02 says, appreciate you for considering the question. I don't find many of my fellow liberals thinking about this. Looking forward to your analysis. Theo Doe says, and this is a long one, I think the companies have the right to silence whoever they want. They are private companies after all, and we don't bat an eye at a restaurant or store saying we reserve the right to refuse service to anyone. Twitter service is the days and microphone to speak forth. They have the right to deplatform those who don't want on their platform. Because at the end of the day, Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, etc. are private companies. It's not like Trump's free speech or platform was taken away. He wasn't banned or distributing newspapers to reach the masses. He wasn't banned from the internet. He could easily make his own website to speak. Would it be harder? Yes, because Twitter built their service on making it easier to speak online. That's their service, which they can refuse to anyone. So I disagree with the people that say Trump was cancelled and silenced. He plainly was not.
Yes, and there is a response to that, which I don't think we should. But basically pointing out the alternative point of view, which I guess means that we need to play the Curb Your Enthusiasm meme because they've pointed out an alternative point of view. No, yeah, basically pointing out that obviously the problem is these big tech companies do have a considerable role in influencing the mainstream opinion, and therefore being able to cancel people is arguably a very serious ability for them to have. And yeah, that's it kind of basically. I think I will say this, I genuinely do think it's an interesting debate, and I particularly like the person who says, yeah, I appreciate you considering the question. I don't find many of my fellow liberals thinking about this, because that's kind of the aspect of it. I think it's one issue where I'm quite happy to say there is a significantly open debate, because I do think there are two equal and quite legitimate viewpoints. So on the one hand, Twitter is a private company, Trump violated their rules, and of course what Trump was doing was pretty objectively harmful, versus the flip side, which is Trump was an elected head of state. He, ultimately, I guess you could say, should be viewed as a legitimate world leader, because he is he was a legitimate world leader, and the ability of a massive tech company that has basically a very relevant platform to just completely kick him off it arguably does suggest a significant amount of power from those companies. So yeah, I would say, in my opinion, I'm very comfortable calling it an open-ended debate. And I think I will say in isolation, I am fine with Trump getting banned, because as I already said, what he did was so obviously harmful. But the flip side is I do think it sets a dangerous precedent of, like, the analogy I gave was, could Vladimir Putin get banned from Twitter because Twitter disagrees with his policies? Could, Boris Johnson get banned from Twitter because, like, in theory, a company has a right to ban whomever. But then, of course, you get to the question of, well, that can actually mean that these companies have a pretty big power in terms of controlling the way many people consume their media. And that's before you get even into bigger things like Google. I mean, if Google decided they wanted to, be unequal towards certain bits treatment, then, or certain media personalities, that would be an even bigger concern. So I think the precedent's potentially dangerous, but in isolation, I'm fine with it. That's my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, on our latest episode, one comment says a free speech version of a site automatically becomes the pedo-Nazi version of the site every single time.
I like that.
Yes,
that's my favorite one.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I do think that, like, ultimately there is a degree to which it's like free speech is it does lead to, yeah, people expressing some pretty mental views, and obviously, I mean, that's the other thing, like we mentioned VPNs. Obviously, I think plenty of VPNs, one of the reasons people are going to be wanting to do that is to do illegal stuff online, which falls into some pretty unsavory territory.
No, it definitely doesn't. If you want to get in touch with us and drop a comment, and we can read your comments, Michael, where can they go to get a hold of us?
Well, they can get to us. That sounds like they're wanting to, like, agitate us. Get to us at Cancel Council YT on Twitter, or at gmail.com. That's CANCELCOUNCIL YT at gmail.com.
I feel like we should stop elongating it out. It's already been funny, and it's no longer funny.
Yeah, I know.
And also get in touch with us on Instagram and on Facebook as well. We'd love to hear from you and get your comments. Now let's go into this week's headlines. Now I've supplied you with some stories this week.
Yes. So we have a very Nazi themed episode, which is.
But before we begin, and let's put this all into context. Have you ever seen The Producers?
Yes, I have seen The Producers. I've seen the remake. I haven't seen the original with what's his face, Willy Wonka. I can't remember his name.
Gene Wilder.
The guy who died. Yeah, Gene Wilder. Yeah, because he was, and then there was like a remake with Matthew Broderick. I've seen the remake.
Matthew Broderick. John Barrowman's in it. Will Ferrell's in it.
He's the sexy Nazi.
It's amazing. And one of my favorite films to say. So with that being said,
it's funny to make fun of Nazis.
It is.
It's our duty to make Nazis. But first of all, let's make fun of the worst people in the world, the gender Nazis. No, this is the one that non-Nazi themed news story. This is again one you sent me. Police break up illegal gender reveal party with various households attending. So police in Swansea had quite a demanding Sunday as they found themselves having to break up a gender reveal party, a birthday party, and a football match gathering. So the funny thing is, it does mention other things like the football match gathering. Obviously, this is in theory, it's mostly just a lockdown story. But I think it's interesting that like gender reveal parties have just become like really into the news, and because obviously there was the big thing with gender reveal parties starting fires in California, and then of course there's the issue of gender reveal parties with regards to COVID, and it's interesting because obviously some might argue, I mean, obviously there's been lots of gender politics in the news as well. Arguably, I think 2020, and this was mostly, I think, due to J.K. Rowling, was probably the big year where the debate around gender identity became much more mainstream than it has in the past. So yeah, it's like, and I guess, why do you think there is this newfound obsession with gender reveal parties in the news?
I guess, get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I mean, like, I don't know whether we sort of discussed on the podcast before, but like anyone who has a gender reveal, like if either of us were to spawn children and announce that we had a child on the way, and either of us said the words gender reveal, I think we'd be legally entitled to shoot each other.
Yes.
Because quite simply, I suppose this will be one for a future episode, but it should be automatically cancelled.
Yes, I
what
kind of
the
agree with
fuck is the point in it?
I know.
Like, be glad that a baby is coming. Like, I don't know, and just the effort. We discussed it on last week's show about the video that I put on social media. The whole effort about announcing about people being pregnant, but Jesus, gender reveals. Like, you don't need to make the song and dance about what gender the baby is. Like, do you remember back in the time where, like, you'd find out the gender when the baby was born, and that would be that.
Yeah, exactly. And then you'd chop your wife's head off. Those were the days.
But nowadays you've got to have blue or pink flavored cupcakes, or
well, it's funny how
flares and fireworks, and like, it's ridiculous.
And like balloons filled with pink powder or blue powder.
Yeah.
It's very strange that you would argue in some sense we have become generally more progressive with our mind, with a mind towards gender equality. That would be the immediate perception. 100 years ago, actually not 100, you can't say that now. I was going to say 100 years ago women couldn't vote. Now over 100 years ago they couldn't vote, but obviously now women are much more equal with men, and yet obviously people are still obsessed with gender as if it matters that much when it really doesn't. And I think it's possible we are actually in the midst of a bit of a backlash with regards to kind of, I guess, not necessarily gender equality, but just like gender sanity. Like, basically, it used to be, I feel like, in kind of the 80s, and a lot of people have pointed this out, actually. I can't remember I do remember, actually. Last person, Charlene Pullen. She's Labour candidate for North Milton Keynes, and also, of course, governor, our alma mater.
Yes.
But she I was interviewing her for the radio, and she was basically talking about how she grew up in the 80s, and in the 80s, like, things weren't as gendered back then. Like, you didn't have like Lego princesses or anything like that. It was just Lego, and it was like, didn't matter if you were a man or a woman or whatever. Things are actually pretty just normal in the 80s. And then with like the Spice Girls, you got the idea of like girl power, and I think we're kind of still in the midst of that, where in a way it's almost like, as we've become more, I guess in a sense you say more feminist, but I put massive air quotes around the term feminist. It's like people have now decided if you are a woman, it does matter, because people have taken like the idea of being a strong, powerful woman, and they've kind of created this idea of womanness around it. And that's why I think gender reveal parties are a bigger thing now, because it's like, oh, is she going to be a strong, independent woman or a brave man? Whereas rather than just saying it's going to be a person and we're going to raise it to be a good person, that's why I think gender's become more important. I agree with you that if we as the true woke people are gonna say it's a human, that's what I'm gonna have. I'm gonna have a species reveal party.
I was just looking at one of the oddest and most frustrating gender reveals. Mo Vlogs, I don't know whether you're familiar with him, over 10 million subscribers on YouTube, did a gender reveal on top of the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. Like, it's just insane.
Is it going to be burkas or I was going to say, I just had the worst. I was going to say burkas or bombs.
Moving on. Let's talk about Nazis. Let's move on to
something more politically correct. So we're moving on to That was the best one. That's like just go one of those. You know what? We should have we should
Daddy, why could I see her job? It's a girl.
yeah, exactly. Oh, that would be like so good. Just like an entire burqa falls down over the Burj Khalifa. Oh dear. Anyway, uh, I've heard a good joke. I don't know if you heard it. It's like a kid says to like a Muslim kid, and he says to his dad, "Dad, why do we wear the towels over our heads?" And he says, "Well, we wear those because the when the sun beats down on your neck in the desert, it's important to keep your neck from getting sunburned." He says, "Why do we wear the flowing white robes?" And the guy says, "Well, son, it's because when you're walking around the desert, you need to keep yourself cool, but you need to keep yourself covered." And he says, "Dad, why do we wear sandals?" And he says, "Well, son, it's because you want to keep your feet, you want to give your feet room to air out, but you don't want to tread on the boiling hot sand of the desert." And the kid says, "Dad, I've got one more question." And he's like, "What is it, son?" He's like, "Why do you still wear it when we live in Bradford?" So that's a good joke. Anyway, oh, actually, wait,
I have a counter joke to that. There was two fellas
okay,
on a London Underground chatting about how diverse London is, and they were saying, we all know at least five Muslim people now. That's how diverse we are in this world. And the other guy turns to and said, "That's what he said."
Oh dear, that was worse. You really wanted to end on a low that no. Now onto the Nazi stories. And we've got first of all, investigation after Nazi monkey appears in Russian circus.
And Nazi goats. Don't forget the goats.
Okay, and there was a Nazi goat. So basically, there was a Russian. So I'll just read the subheading: Russian prosecutors have launched an investigation after a monkey wearing a Nazi uniform performed at a state circus. So basically, there was a Nazi. Apparently, it was commissioned by the Russian Orthodox Church, and it was a circus performance. And somebody thought it would be funny or the people thought it would be funny to dress a monkey and a goat up as a Nazi. And what do you think, Luke? Do you think that was funny? Do you think?
I think it's spectacular.
I think it's hilarious.
Like genuinely, what we need in 2021 is
more Nazi goats,
more animals dressed as war paraphernalia.
I know, yeah, exactly. It's I mean, ultimately, see, it sounds like it's like ultimately. Let's be real here. Russia, I imagine, is probably not a country that will be sympathetic to Nazis, and I would also kind of suspect that if you were pro-Nazi, you probably wouldn't dress a monkey up as a Nazi. So it sounds like, I mean, it's very strange because I mean, you mentioned the producers. This is pretty obviously an example of making fun of Nazis. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't really see what the issue is.
And especially like Russia of all places do have more right to make fun of the Nazis than the British do,
exactly,
because I mean they sort of did take over Berlin.
I know, yeah, exactly. The Russians earned their rights to just have as many damn Nazi circus performers as they. I like the idea that obviously Britain and America famously took all the German Nazi nuclear scientists and gave them like amnesty so that we could. I like to think Russia's priorities were different. They just got all the circus performers. It's like we'll get all the Nazi.
Break time for Hitler and Germany.
Yeah, that's. I mean, ultimately, yeah, it's a great story, and I think we can agree. It almost feels wrong to say like they shouldn't be cancelled because it's like why would anyone even think they should be cancelled in the first place? Because they're literally making fun of Nazis and look at this cute little Nazi, no, this adorable Nazi monkey.
Have you seen Jojo Rabbit?
Yes, sorry, I have.
With Rebel Wilson
and Sam Rockwell.
And Stephen Merchant.
Yeah. Heil Hitler.
I mean, the way that we can produce those sort of content, surely that should be universal now. Like, I guess in 50 or 60 years' time, we can joke about Donald Trump more than we are now.
Yeah, that's kind of it. I mean, I think like ultimately, I do think that there is a degree to which there can be a debate about how appropriate it is to make fun of Nazis in that context. And the reason why I say that is because sometimes there's obviously the line between I guess, making fun of Nazis in a way that minimizes the harm Nazis actually did, versus making fun of Nazis in a way that minimizes like the integrity and the dignity of Nazis. And obviously, you want to be doing more of the latter and less of the former. But I also think that line is quite subjective, and therefore that's kind of why I'm against the idea of having these big canceling things about it. Because I can personally be like, oh, I think that joke about Nazis was kind of more on the side of minimizing the harm they did, rather than actually making fun of them. But ultimately I can also say that's kind of my personal judgment, and like someone else might disagree, so I wouldn't be like, oh, that's objectively bad. And yeah, like people might think when I make a joke that they'll think, oh, that's not appropriate. So yeah, overall that's pretty much my opinion. I think that it was fine. Do you want to hear some more? I like this one. So there's some more Nazi news, I think.
Yes.
And it's German quarantine breakers to be held in refugee camps and detention centers. So Germans, this is from the New York Post, Germans who repeatedly refuse to quarantine after being exposed to COVID-19 will be held in detention centers and even under police guard, according to reports. They have already approved plans to hold quarantine breakers in a fenced-off section of a refugee camp. So there's lots of stories about different states in obviously the German Federation coming up with their own camps where they're going to put people who go against the laws. What do you think? Do you think this bodes well? Or do you think it's just the Germans doing what comes naturally?
Exactly right. Just forget Auschwitz-Birkenau. They'll just clear it to one side. Get all the COVID people in there. Who need shoes anyway?
Yes. Now, obviously, maybe you're a bit concerned about the Germans, but you'll be pleased to know the Austrians are also. This is from the Jerusalem Post. Austria gives Iranian Holocaust deniers millions. Shoah survivors pastry. So the story here is that there's a link here. It says those who do business with the Ayatollahs finance the Iranian nuclear weapons program and the threats of annihilation against Israel. And it says the Vienna-based branch of the NGO Stop the Bomb issued a stinging indictment of Wolfgang Stanek, president of Austria's umbrella parliament covering its 9-state government, because of his efforts to expand trade with the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now, of course, you might be wondering, what about the second comment? Well, days after Stanek's visit with Iran's ambassador, Upper Austria State Governor Thomas Stelzer sent Holocaust survivors in Israel a piece of original Linzer Torte, a type of Austrian pastry. So basically, we've got Germany's putting people in camps. Russia's got Nazi circuses, and Austria is giving money to the Iranian government while giving pastries to. Imagine how stale those pastries would be by the time they got there. It's so funny.
You couldn't make this up.
I know.
Like, of all the countries you could put together, Austria and Iran is
I know.
At least that's like saying Brazil and Zimbabwe. I mean, like, it's
what we need is Australia and Iraq to form a union, so they can have like two countries with similar sounding names, like Austria versus Australia, Iran versus Iraq, the real proxy war. No, yeah, it's I enjoyed that story. Who would have thought we'd have the most fun on the episode that's just talking about the Nazis? Oh dear. Yeah, it's a good thing we don't have enough subscribers on this channel to worry about monetization. Oh dear. No, yeah, I love it. Anyway, let's move on to canceling. Oh, I guess I go first this time, don't I? Yes. So I'm going to be canceling, and this is my issue. Okay, I could have timed this to be more topical, but I don't care. It is Academy Award nominations that are not relevant to the overall quality of the film. And this is my example. So it's things like special effects, costume design, production design, original song. And the reason why is because famously Suicide Squad won an Oscar, and every single person makes fun of it. They say, "Oh, Suicide Squad, that really terrible film, won an Oscar. Isn't that ridiculous?" But the thing is, they won like an Oscar, I think, for like costume design, which is kind of fair because it's like a superhero film. Obviously, people are wearing all sorts of costumes.
Yeah.
The problem is this issue inevitably comes from the fact that if you're going to have a award for a film that doesn't rely on the overall quality of the film, then inevitably you're going to get loads of films winning Oscars that are actually just like bad films.
I decided to move you because my legs are being cramped, but carry on.
Okay, I mean, yeah, I'm pretty much done. Basically, I think like because obviously original screenplay, adapted screenplay, best picture, these are all things which reflect the overall quality of a film. Like you're not going to watch like Suicide Squad is never going to win best original screenplay or anything like that.
Yeah.
But like Suicide Squad, they could win best best costume design because that's possible. And then everyone's going to sit there and go, "Oh, Suicide Squad." So it's kind of like it's just a necessary consequence. You're going to potentially have loads of mediocre or even terrible films winning Oscars because you have all these Oscars out there. Basically, the participation trophies of Oscars. They don't actually affect the overall quality.
I mean, it's a fair point, and I guess for somebody who runs a film channel, it gives you an entitlement to do it. Just if only there was another person who could run that channel with you. Not naming names, I'm always available. But I think you've got to give like the crew the credit when it's due. I mean,
yeah, I suppose you're right.
Like it's not just about the performers themselves, and I think it's important. Not only the acting that's been we're seeing, but also the craft behind it, because there is a lot of hard work and talented people within the industry.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of do get that. I think I guess here's my kind of thoughts. They should have like they should have a separate thing, not called the Oscars. Basically, it should be like okay, you got the because here's what I do a lot of the time. See, I'm one of those people.
But then to already quash your argument is that surely why would you call it a separate thing when they've worked on the same film?
No, okay. See, here's my thing on the matter.
Because surely a
there,
costume designer deserves just as much of an award, the same award and the same credit and value as the best actor, right?
I guess I mean it's kind of like I get what you're saying, but it's like unfortunately, I guess it's just a situation where the costume designer, it's just like what they're doing. It just doesn't help the film enough. Like they need to bloody get to work and start and become a director or a screenwriter. Because no one gives a shit about costume design. No, yeah. I mean, overall, it's kind of like at the end of the day, I do get it, but I will say this. Okay, so when I'm one of those people who likes to watch all of the Oscar nominations, and I kind of have two categories for Oscar nominations, and the two categories are very much films which were nominated because they are obviously good films, which in other words would be the best picture, best original screenplay, things like that. And then the alternative is I'm also like, oh, and if I have time, it's kind of like I'm like films that were nominated for stuff that just isn't as relevant, like, oh, it was nominated for best set design. And I'm like, could be good, but I don't really care. So I guess I'm just saying, I feel like maybe my issue is just that the Oscars, they treat everything equal when it's kind of like it's weird that the best picture winner, like literally the best picture, like that should be, you think that'd be like a really significant, huge thing. Like, oh, you literally made the best picture of the year. And yet that's treated the same as like, oh yeah, that best supporting actor was pretty good. Great. Loves Sam Rockwell in Three Billboards. I mean, I actually did. It's kind of like, I feel like there needs to be an acknowledgement that some Oscars matter more than others. I guess that's really what I'm getting at. Like, ultimately, not all Oscars are created equal.
I was just looking. The 93rd Academy Awards will be pushed back to late April this year.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's why I was like, oh, should I wait for this to be more topical? I was like, no, I can't be bothered to wait. I'm angry now.
Well, which of course, I suppose that'll be standard for more ceremonies. But I don't. This is a tough one because as somebody who has sort of knows a lot of people who work within the production side of things.
You're gonna burn some bridges.
They deserve as much of an award as the actors do. No, I can't.
Sorry. It's been a terrible day for me. Now I'm gonna have to. Okay, let's see what you're gonna cancel. Hopefully, I can refuse to cancel it.
Okay, so I mentioned this on a previous podcast, but I've been pushed over the edge this week, Lockdown weddings.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let me hear where you go with this.
So I saw a friend of mine on Facebook this week, just out of complete nowhere, just announced they got married, and I was
Hmm.
like, right, like I didn't know they were engaged or what have you, and there she is in a wedding dress on her wedding day. I was like, right, so. And then she comes out the other and says, "Well, we decided to get married during lockdown because we thought it'd be easier and quicker and just the best way to do it." I was like, well, "Hang on a second. I think she got married in a different country, so it wasn't over here."
Oh wow.
Um, but not only do you just announce out of nowhere you do it, but you're doing it in lockdown, like which is just totally irresponsible and illogical. Um, I don't know whether I've told the story to you, but I went for afternoon tea for my fiance's grandmother's 80th birthday. And when we were there, there was a wedding reception happened there. And we see that the bride and groom coming out. And I was sort of looking, I was thinking, hang on a second. What and this bear in mind, this was September when, things were pretty
Getting
lax,
worse.
but things were starting to get worse.
Hmm.
I was thinking, like, why would you decide to do that? Because of all the times you should be getting married during a lockdown and during one of the biggest pandemics this generation has ever seen, um, it's not the time to do it, and I just don't get why people do it. Um, Simply because as well, it's meant to be the biggest day you plan. And
Hmm.
funerals, yes, they're a completely different topic, and they
Why
they
do
are
people
for
choose to die? No.
um but for a wedding it is totally um easy to cancel and to put off, but people decide to do it. I don't get it.
Yeah, I actually have like I guess three separate thoughts coming from three different directions on the thing. The
Mm,
first thing I would say is that there are obviously people, you generally religious people, to whom being married might be of a very considerable importance. Obviously, in our secular society of the UK, many people, you know, live their lives together, have children, grow old together without ever getting married. So for many people in the UK, marriage is kind of a dispensable thing. For many people, marriage is something they just do because it's like nice. I will say there are people who obviously for various reasons, and it may even be because of completely non-religious ethics, want to get married before they proceed to do other things, like whether it's moving in together or having children. Although I think having children would be a bit weird, and but maybe if you get pregnant now, you're like, oh, the lockdown will be over. In fact, actually, to
mm,
be fair, having children now isn't necessarily a bad idea because that way, think about it. When they're a kid, they have to be at home all the time anyway. So, or like when they're a little baby. But anyway, there's going to be people who do need to get married. And I think if those people want to have a small ceremony, then that's fine. And if anything, I kind of feel sorry for those people because, of course, like you say, it is supposed to be a big occasion and a big celebration. I agree with you that if you are somebody for whom marriage is not, I'm going to say like a necessity, or let's say something which carries a very intrinsic value, then I would think I'm not sure why you wouldn't just wait until you can have a much bigger celebration. And
mm,
of course, the fact if you do have a big celebration when, during September or something like that, you are obviously exposing people, and particularly like people of all different ages, because you're going to have young people and old people at a wedding
mm,
to risk. So I pretty much agree, but I will say I empathize a lot with the frustrations of people as a young person myself, who, I mean, obviously I know you're a young person too, but I empathize with people who are really frustrated at how this lockdown, it does feel like it's kind of taken just a year out of a lot of people's lives, like to varying degrees, but it is kind of like I get that some people are just like they want to get to that next step in their life, and for a lot
mm.
of people that next step is marriage, and they're just like, oh, this lockdown, it's bloody taken just put a big year-long halt on everything, and I hate it, and that's why they're doing what they're doing. So, you know, I mean, I did say I joked that I would refuse to cancel your thing on principle. I'm kind of in mixed minds about it because obviously it does depend on the context. I think I will say, based on the fact that I think there are some people who I could sympathize with them for doing that, I'll say that I'm not going to cancel it. It would have to be a bit more specific, you know. Uh, and I will say this. I actually wonder this whether or not, because obviously a pretty high number of marriages end in divorce. I don't know what it is. It's like quite a lot, isn't it? Like 50% or something ridiculous like that. I wonder whether or not when there's like COVID marriages, what the divorce rate would be like there, because I would like to think that people who are getting married during these times are taking the whole thing a bit more seriously, and that's why they're doing it, because they really feel strongly about doing it. I'll be very disappointed if a lot of people who have got married in COVID, 5 years time, 50% of them aren't together anymore. But for now, I'm optimistic. I'm assuming these people who got married during COVID, it was because they were in love, Luke. They wanted to be together and they just wanted to express their love, in holy matrimony, and it's for life, Luke. They're going to stick
But that only
together.
goes so far. I
I
don't. I
know,
don't get
I
it.
know, I don't know. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it varies depending on people. I mean, the thing is, like, obviously, there's the people who have the very formality marriages, and I think also, I mean, there are some people you don't know. There are like some people who will celebrate like a different aspect of the marriage and have the marriage be quite small. Like I remember one group of people had a massive engagement party,
Mm.
and then they got married like 3 years later, and it was just like nothing. And I'm like, well, you know what, that's sort of fine, because at the end of the day they already had the big party, the engagement party. Don't know why they had an engagement party, but at the end of the day, to each their own. I think, yeah, I agree with you. It is. I think the problem is it varies depending on the specific person. So I couldn't cancel the whole concept, but I'm sure there's lots of individual examples I would be like, oh, that's stupid. But
Mm.
there's a lot of variables. So it's my belief.
Damn. That's
Yeah,
all I can say. Damn. Only 1 out of 4 this week.
I know. Yeah.
That's how savage we've been.
Well, usually we do 3 out of 4,
Mm.
so it's basically like this is the reverse now. No, yeah. The good news is I've already got one thing I want to cancel for next week, but you'll have to wait until next week. And if you want to know about, I mean, if you want us to look at your comments and maybe even deal with some of the things you want canceling, you can contact us on the cancelyt@gmail.com. And all right, let's just tell you that in the form of a lyrical tune. CANCELCOUNCILYT. And
gmail.com. And
and
go reach us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and feel free to comment below, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We'd love to hear from you. But until next week, I have been Luke Hanson Walsh. That has been Michael Brown. Speak to you next week on the Council Council.
back at ya.